this is coming from, because it's kind of a unique setup. I think, typically when we're tracking storms, they're coming across the country, they're coming on the West Coast. This one is coming from the north. So the low pressure system's right here. It's not even a low pressure system yet. It's what we call a vorticity maximum. It's a piece of energy at the jet stream level. It's going to come shooting down in the base of this trough. So think about something coming down a slide. There's a big dip in the jet stream, and this is going to ride that dip in the jet stream all the way down here into the Carolinas. You can actually see that little bit of spin just west of Hudson Bay, which is that big body of water in eastern Canada. And again, this is not the polar vortex, though the polar vortex is responsible for pushing this south. So you can really say that the polar vortex is causing this, but it's just not the polar vortex, if you will, heading our way. So it's traveling south, it's bringing the energy, and it's bringing a whole bunch of cold air with it. Arctic chill is on the way. So over the next couple of days, it doesn't exactly get warm. 41 tomorrow, 44 on Friday. That'll feel balmy. And you can see Saturday, we're already colored in red there because we're weather impact alert for potential snow and, yes, cold. The alerts for cold and snow, it's just not one. Here's what it looks like at the jet stream level. Watch this thing drop down. I mean, this thing is fascinating. Look at it. By Saturday morning, it's right over us. So this is why I'm highly confident of snow, because even without low pressure, which will form on the coast right here, this shifts to the coast and becomes a low pressure system, we would see snow from the upper level system, or the vorticity, if you will, and not even the low. So we've got like two opportunities for snow, the low pressure and that disturbance. So one of the two is going to give us snow. That's why there's a high confidence. But notice on the coast, there's like a little split there. Even in the models, it's kind of like, hey, we kind of don't know where the low is actually going to set up. Could it be near the Outer Banks, or could it be near Myrtle Beach? The Myrtle Beach one would be definitely more of a snow event for everybody, and maybe some heavy snow, and then tons of cold air behind it. So for the weekend, we're weather impact alert for both snow and cold, and I don't want to undersell the cold part, because the cold is going to be the real deal. By itself, it would have been a big deal, but after a week of what we've already had, I do think from a water pipe and water main standpoint, this could be really problematic, because we've chilled that water. If you've used your sink at all in your house and turned just the cold water tap on, feel how cold that water is. It's getting colder by the day. And that means the temperature is getting closer to a point where it would take less cold to freeze it. So when we look at this disturbance, you see this piece of energy. It's a rather impressive piece here. This is why my confidence in snow, even yesterday, I thought, this is something. It's certainly not nothing. You could see that disturbance right to our west. In fact, if anything happened, it looks like it's further west, which is actually a better chance of snow for us. That's probably been the biggest change in the guidance, that disturbance coming down further west, which eventually could tug the low pressure system west. I'll be telling you, doing this long enough, you look at these systems on the coast, there's always a couple days ahead of time where it looks like it's in one spot. As we get closer, it gets that northwest trend. It starts shifting back towards the coast. It's almost like the coast wants to grab it and bring it back west a little bit. So that's always something in the back of my mind. Now, the moderate impacts from snow, I love this graphic because it really kind of shows you, when people say how much snow, this is a graphic I show, it's enough snow to cause problems, okay? Up north, they used to say, is this shovelable snow or plowable snow? We're not to that point quite yet, but we're certainly going to see snow that will cause impacts on the roads. So moderate impacts is basically, that's what it means. There's a 70 to 80% chance there's going to be slick and snow-covered roads this weekend. That's a pretty high chance for us. In fact, I think most of us see at least light snow. The heavier snow, this is going to be what Tim and I, for the next 24 hours, will be sweating out. Where does this heavy snow band set up? We call it a deformation zone. If you're really weather geeky, it's called 700 millibar frontogenesis. It's where the cold air is being pushed up, and you get a band of intense snowfall, sometimes thunder snow. Cue Jim Cantori gif. Would definitely have some thunder snow at some point, I think, in a few areas, and really intense snowfall rates, 3 to 4 inches an hour. But where that forms, good luck. If you know where it's going to form and I don't, all the power to you. But I would tell you that is a fool's errand. It's like trying to figure out where a specific thunderstorm is going to develop when you know there's going to be one in the area. So that's kind of the setup I see right now. Now, the snow meter, this might be the highest I've had it since last year. I have to look back. We had 2 little events last year. I think we might have got to a 4, because that means legit chance of snow. Now, Would Charlotte close, and should you buy bread and milk? Probably, because you guys know any snow usually shuts down the city. But I'm not ready to go higher because I'm not confident in the totals yet. But I am confident to give you kind of a spread. We call these probabilities, right? What are the chances of certain snowfall falling? Trace to an inch, which means something, 25%. 1 to 4 inches. I know that's a big spread, but that's honestly where we're at, 55%. You combine those two, that's 80%. Okay, 80% chance we're going to see at least a trace to 4 inches, 20% it goes higher. That could trend up. And this is also going to be a very powdery cold snow. You see how cold the temperatures are? My question is how much of this evaporates before reaching the ground? Or in this case, we call it sublimation. Sublimation is a term, instead of evaporation, which is a liquid to a gas, sublimation is a solid to a gas. You know, snow sitting on the ground or even ice will slowly lose water content through sublimation. Happens to snowpack in the mountains all the time out west, and that could happen on the way down. It actually could lose some of the moisture and the snow could fall apart. But you see how thick the snow is all day Saturday with temperatures in the low 20s. So this is going to stick, and this is going to be a very special kind of snow. I call it Carolina powder. We don't see this very often. Liquid to snowfall ratio means basically how much liquid to snow, usually 8 to 1, this could be 15 to 1. So very fluffy snow. We'll talk a lot about this with Tim, kind of break it down and get you ready for what is going to be another winter storm this weekend. Stick around in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY, and Tim and I could probably be doing the exact same forecast, honestly, right now, because we're going to have kind of similar impacts across our viewing areas, and our viewing areas also could be completely split in half from a little bit of snow to a whole bunch, Tim. And I think that's the million-dollar question right now, at least in my mind. I'm fairly confident we're going to see some snow. I'm just not sure how much. There's a lot of little, monkey wrenches out there, and we've talked offline about it a lot. But this really is, in some ways, an easier storm because it's all snow, but it's also the amounts and some other little variables that could make it a fluffy big snow or almost just a light fluffy snow. It's that's really the dilemma right now.
And it could vary a little bit county by county, right? And they always do, but maybe even in a little bit of a randomized pattern. I think, when we get closer to this and we're tracking the short range and the hour by hour, and then eventually the radar, the day of the storm, Brad, I think you might have the tracking where there's some dry slots that are developing and some heavier bands too that are developing as well. And those are just not really able to be pinpointed a couple days ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that could be the difference between you getting more than 6 inches or less than 2. And that's really just the way that it works out. But it is a long duration event. It's basically an all Saturday thing. And if it's a high ratio snow, it doesn't take all that much to get over 2 inches. And around here, we've been going, it's over 7 years now that we've had 4 inches of snow. So I'm curious if we'll break that streak. I've thought we'd break it before, and we're still waiting. So we'll see what happens this time.
Yeah, it's been a while for 3 or 4 inches for us. I think 2018, 2016-ish were the last 2 ones. But Tim, we brought up that the fluffy snow versus wet snow. And the snowfall ratio thing is really fascinating to me. As somebody who loves to ski, you've probably heard of powder snow. It's like in Utah, they're kind of known for it. And their ratios, by the way, could be 30, 40, 50 to 1. It's crazy out there. But powdery snow is really more air than water, more so than normal. It's usually 90% air, in some cases 95% air in this case. But Tim, one of the things that makes me nervous is this is like a catch-22, if you will. This fluffy snowfall ratio could really fluff it up, but because of that same dry, cold air, it could reduce the amount of moisture that makes it to the ground. So you're like battling these two polar opposite things. One's telling you this could be a fluffy snow that could make totals higher, but the dry air also could reduce the amount of moisture that makes it to the ground. So that's kind of a dilemma that we're not used to having.
That's a good point. It is a rare storm, in the fact that it is so dry, and we're not even sweating out a warm nose. We're not tracking out any sort of mixing. In this case, like you said, we're worried about those ratios. And just because the air's drier and it means the snow might stack up taller, it doesn't make it worse necessarily.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make it a higher impact, right? So 8 inches of dry snow might not be any higher impact than 4 inches of wet snow. In fact, it could be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's harder to drive in. It's certainly not harder to shovel. All of those things are, we always fixate on the inches, and that's what everyone wants to know about.
Yeah.
But in this case, that might actually be the wrong thing to really be zeroed in on.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this yesterday, and I think it's a good point. We talked about it this morning. I think Chris Mulcahy had a great graphic. In some cases, the lighter fluffy snow might be more dangerous than deeper fluffy snow. And what I mean by that is the thin layer that forms on the road could ice up and be kind of slick, where if it gets thicker, and you know how it is being from up north, when you get like deeper dry snow, it's actually pretty easy to drive in compared to a sheet of ice. And so as long as you have good tires and good traction, you can actually get around. It's slower, mind you. If you have four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, it's great. But in some cases, a packed, snow road that has deeper snow is sometimes easier to drive in. And the way I could relate it to people from the South who've never driven in deeper snow, it's like driving on pavement versus a dirt road. You can drive on a dirt road, you just can't make crazy maneuvers and peel out and brake because you will slide on the gravel. But it is drivable, right, Tim? I think that's a dilemma. We've seen these these snow jams, we like to call them, a half an inch or inch of snow at rush hour when it's really cold has caused issues in Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, Atlanta over the years. That scenario is the one you worry about sometimes more than the deeper snow, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and we're coming into a weekend again. We have the weekend timing being a Saturday. The super, super cold temperatures, and so when that snow is really, really cold, it is really, has more traction, like Chris was saying, like you were saying. And so that might not be a problem, at least initially. And most people, I would think, are just going to stay home anyway. Once you see how hard it's coming down,
for sure,
you're probably not going to be venturing out there. I do think it's we're going to have the problem the day or two after when it's already melted a little bit in the sun and then it's refrozen. We still have people trapped in neighborhoods up here. I'm not kidding you. It's not everybody. It's probably a minority right now. But if you've got a long driveway, if you just have a shady neighborhood, there are people that still haven't been out to get groceries right now. And that's kind of the point that they're in, and we only got about 2 inches of sleet, but that stuff doesn't melt. This stuff can melt, but it's going to be on top of that for you. And we're still going to be very cold going into next week. So these are impacts that are going to linger a while, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't realize in my own neighborhood, Tim, we had a section that was in the shade, and I drove it today. It's right near our high school. That is still a sheet of ice like that. And it's so isolated, but it is so bad, too. It's like you feel like you're like in this alternate universe when you go to this shady spot, because it is just a glacier, and then there's dry pavement on either side of it, but it's on a hill, so it makes it virtually impossible for people to get out of that street. So I sense that as well, and people complaining about school delays again tomorrow and the cancellations lingering. It's because of stuff like that, because these school buses have got to get back to these neighborhoods and people can't get out. I understand. It's a tough thing. Our jobs are tough enough, Tim. The school superintendents and people that make those decisions, bless their hearts, that is brutal.
I know. And you can't win.
No.
We might relate to that you can't win a little bit, but they really can't win whatever they decide. So not an easy job for sure.
All right,
what do you think about power outages in this system? Just to bring something up really quickly. We talked so much about it last week.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big problem here,
Nope.
but we do have some winds that will be blowing around. I think there will be a wind factor on Saturday.
It's funny you say that, because I've been asked that a lot, and I said, snow doesn't stick, this especially dry snow doesn't stick to branches, power lines, but I did think, man, maybe that wind could rock a couple branches. So you never want to rule it out, because you always got the wind issue. You've got people sliding on the snow and taking out power lines. So it may not be directly related to the snow, but other things with this storm. But Tim, what I want to say is, like, geeking out a little bit about this with the snow ratios. I just pulled up the European model QPF. Right? I'm not pulling up the snow maps, because I'm not going to show you that. The QPF around our area, we're pretty similar. It's anywhere from 1/2 inch to 6/10 of an inch. So 5/10 to 6/10 of an inch of liquid. Okay, there's a few spots you see. To your point, look at these little hot spots. It's almost like thunderstorms, right? Where the model's trying to hint at banding going on, where there could be some enhanced areas. I'll show you that, and then I'll converse it with the GFS, which is a little bit different orientation, but honestly about the same QPF for our two locations, about 1/2 to 6/10, maybe 7/10 up towards you, a little bit higher. And then at the coast, there's some crazy totals, which I don't even want to get into. Like 1.5 inch of QPF seems insane for this. But then I started looking at the water vapor loop, and going forward with the precipitable water, there's not a big plume of moisture coming west. This is really going to be very little moisture that has to overcome a lot of dry air. So I think the Arctic air, that fluffiness part, is probably going to be the thing that drives the snow totals. But you talked about this banding thing, and I mentioned it in my forecast. Banding is almost like thunderstorms, deformation zones, the 700 millibar frontogenesis, we call it. It is literally like trying to forecast where thunderstorms actually develop, and it's really hard, Tim, in these events.
It is. That's the small scale stuff that it'll vary county by county, and you're not going to be able to pinpoint that right away. So that's kind of why you do a range in numbers anyway, to hopefully account for those possibilities. But there are going to be some bullseyes. There are going to be some heavier amounts in parts of the Carolinas. What makes this storm really unique is that most people in the Carolinas should be getting snow.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's unheard of in the history books. There are plenty of examples of it, just not too many recent examples of it. And so that is something that I think will be unique here, on top of the fact that it's pure snow, that a lot of people are going to get the chance to experience it, either enjoy it or not enjoy it. That's kind of your perspective. But this is going to be a wide-ranging system, I think, that goes basically from Atlanta to the Outer Banks and all the way down to Charleston, too.
Yeah, and let's talk about the odd direction this is kind of developing from. I was chatting with one of my friends in the foothills who does some forecasting up there, the Foothills Weather Network. They do a great job up there. We work together a lot, and we were talking about, like, it's so tough because it's almost like throwing darts at a dartboard on where this low forms. Normally we're tracking this, like last week's storm. Remember, we were tracking it off the west coast coming across the country. This thing is coming in from the north, at least the energy, and that's a very different area to track. Like, I'm looking at water vapor loops in Hudson Bay right now, like where this vorticity is, how it's dropping south. And if there's one thing that's happened in the last 24 hours, Tim, and probably why today, and really I think it started last night or maybe the 18Z runs yesterday, was the vorticity seems to be a little bit to our west as it comes down, which is actually a more favorable location for snow here, and it takes on, and we don't talk a lot about this, but a negative tilt to the trough, which means the trough, instead of being straight up and down or tilted to the right, it's tilted west or to the left, and that usually means significant snow for somebody in this kind of scenario.
It does, yeah, and just the orientation, the way that those troughs work, and the way that the reason that that's favorable is it just encourages the air downwind of it to really go upward a lot. And weather is a lot of just about, is the air going up or is the air going down? And in this case, there's going to be a lot of rising air up across the Carolinas, downwind of that thing, and we're going to be seeing, probably some impressive rates of snowfall. I know the Weather Service was mentioning that there, especially in eastern North Carolina, there could be a couple of 1 to 2 inch per hour snow bands that's set up. And over that way, you get closer to the coast, closer to the low pressure area. They could have even higher winds. And they even mentioned flirting with blizzard conditions. I mean, this is going to be interesting, especially in like maybe the Norfolk area and down toward the Cape and all these places of the Outer Banks. That's going to be not something you see every day, but it's happened before. Like we said, it's just rare.
Yeah, we did mention that today. I was on a call with corporate about the B word, the blizzard. And folks at home that aren't familiar with the term blizzard, I think you think heavy snow. Yes, it can happen with heavy snow, but as Tim mentioned, it's about wind. 35-mile-an-hour winds for 3 consecutive hours with visibilities less than a quarter mile. And so blizzards are really about wind. And because, Tim, this is going to be a nor'easter, and because of how strong it could be, I think the Outer Banks and areas on the coast not only have to worry about snow and blizzard conditions, but coastal flooding and maybe a surge parameter to this as well when you're bringing that much water with a low pressure system. So that's a whole nother impact on the coast that folks might have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, just no thanks. That is no fun to be out there during one of these things. And they deal with this up in New England all the time, and the Outer Banks deals with it too. But man, you talk about a winter storm, and then you're worrying about these waves crashing and doing all sorts of damage. And I think we're in a pretty unfavorable lunar cycle right now, where the tides are not going to be in your favor. I saw some New England Mets talking about that up there, so I would assume it's the same for the Outer Banks. But it's not going to be a party over that way. So. It's a lot different storm if you're worried about your property and you're worried about your communities in that regard. Whereas if you're in Charlotte or you're in Greensboro, you might be just, hey, maybe I have a fun snow day with the kids and then deal with the road conditions afterwards. That might be a bit of a different story.
I was just looking at my watch at the lunar cycle. Yeah, we're 4 days away from a full moon, which means that happens between Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so that just adds to the water levels as well. So, Tim, you and I are kind of on the same page. Talk a little about the timing you think up there. I know you don't have a totals map yet, but you are kind of thinking about a range. So are we. I think maybe at 11 tonight I'll have a map. I don't know. It depends. I got some new data coming in. But what are your thoughts right now for your area?
Yeah, I think, at this stage in the game, the best thing we can give people is the timing. And, that is what I think is probably the most certain of this system. You probably want to be where you want to be by about 10 o'clock on Friday. That gives you some buffer. That gives you a little bit of a little leeway here. But that's when the snow could start. And like we were saying, it will start. When it starts coming down, it'll stick, basically.
Yeah.
And so if you have those nice dry interstates that we've been enjoying the last couple of days, they could get pretty slick pretty quickly. So you don't want to mess around with that too much. Once it starts, it's going to linger. And this is about a 24-hour storm, maybe even more like a 26 or a 28-hour storm. So it's a long time. And if you think about it that way, boy, is there a lot of opportunity to add up several inches of dry, fluffy snow. And that snow might compact a little bit as it goes throughout the day. So we'll see what the measurements end up with. But the main impact for people, especially if you're in the Piedmont, I think is going to be difficult travel. Not so much the power outages, but more so just traveling around the area is going to be hard. I tend to think for Greensboro, I think my starting window would be like a 4 to 6, 4 to 8 range, which that sounds like a crazy number. I get that. But it's going to be coming down for a while. So if the dry slots don't kill us, that's probably pretty achievable, and you might have some places getting more than that.
Yeah, and Tim, we also, a rare thing for us, we could be talking about drifting, right? Because the wind's going to be blowing.
Yes.
The snow could be blowing and drifting. We might see snow drifts that we don't normally get around here. I'm seeing some of our gusts probably in the 25, maybe 30 mile per hour range, outside possibility. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way with timing. I think midnight for sure, but I would definitely do 10 o'clock just to be safe, because as you mentioned, even a light snow shower could be rough. And you could see how pretty much everything gets covered in snow pretty quickly overnight into Saturday morning with 20s. And I may update my totals, but I really kind of went with an ensemble spread here of what I think for the Charlotte area. I have an 80% chance between trace and 4 inches with a 20% at 5 inches. So that's pretty conservative right now, just because I like to start low and go up. But I think an inch, like I said, I think I'm 90% confident at least an inch. And if you were to say, hey, Brad, what's an exact total? I'd probably be in that 3 to 5 inch range for sure. But it definitely could fluff up. I'm kind of sweating out where this heavy band sets up, and it could be a pretty big difference. Some folks could get an inch, and other folks could get 8 inches. And that, I know that it doesn't seem like really great science, but that's kind of where we are at with this system.
Yeah, it's true. And, gosh, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. In a way, we're right up against it, and it feels like it's about to start. But in another way, we still have 2 days to go. Yeah. So we have some time, and we'll adjust the message as we get a little closer. But in terms of preps, you probably want to make sure you have things to be comfortable with over the weekend, and probably plan not to go anywhere for a couple of days still.
Yeah, hopefully you got enough groceries last weekend. I know there's a lot of short supply at the local grocery store, so hopefully if you have extra, share with your neighbors if you can. So, Tim, we're out of time tonight. I think tomorrow we're planning on doing an hour. That might be a shock to you, but I just got that text message. So we might be doing a longer show tomorrow with other Mets. We'll see you again tomorrow, but we got more WCNC Plus. Stick around.